You've been in this dance before. The back and forth, the push and pull, the moments when it feels like everything could change, yet nothing ever does. You've tried to reach them, to get through the walls they've built around themselves, and more often than not, you've been met with silence, avoidance, or a careful distance that feels almost impossible to penetrate. But there's a subtle language that avoidants speak, a language of tiny cracks, fleeting confessions, and hidden desires that only those paying close attention can catch. Today, you're going to learn exactly what to look for, because when they say certain things, it's not just conversation, it's a signal that you've reached them, that you've, in a way, defeated the avoidant. This isn't about winning or losing in the traditional sense. It's about seeing the truth of their emotions, understanding the dance, and recognizing the moments when their carefully curated walls start to crumble. It's about catching those rare, fleeting admissions that hint at longing, curiosity, and connection. And you'll know because you'll feel it deep down in the way the conversation shifts, the way the energy changes, the almost imperceptible signs that say more than words ever could. You might not hear a declaration of love, and you might not get the clarity you crave, but you will see the unmistakable signs. The first thing to understand is that avoidants rarely come forward voluntarily. They rarely offer their vulnerability on a silver platter. So when they do, it's monumental. When they say something unexpected, something that cuts through the usual defenses, that's when you know you've struck a chord. That's when you know the avoidant is thinking about you, wrestling internally with feelings they're not used to admitting. The first point is their signature phrase, the exact words that signal a crack in their armor. It might be something simple, almost offhand, that betrays a hint of longing, curiosity, or concern. It's rarely a full confession, rarely a "I love you" or "I miss you" in black and white. Instead, it's subtle. It's the hesitation in their phrasing, the way they almost say something but don't quite finish. It's the "I was thinking" or "do you ever" that trails off, leaving room for interpretation. It's those words that feel like a window opening just slightly, enough for you to glimpse what they're feeling, enough for you to know that they're not as detached as they try to appear. When an avoidant speaks in this way, they're testing the waters, gauging your response and showing that a part of them wants to engage, even if the louder part of them resists. This phrase, however small it seems, carries weight. It's the subtle admission that they're aware of their feelings, that they're processing emotions they usually shove aside, and that they're curious about the space you occupy in their life. You don't need grand gestures to know the truth. This tiny linguistic clue tells you everything. The second point is the silent shift. The way their energy changes when you challenge them, intrigue them, or simply refuse to chase them. Avoidants are masters at emotional control, at maintaining distance, at keeping their feelings under lock and key. But when you stay grounded, when you show that you have a life outside of their pull, and you don't bend to the usual games, something shifts inside them. It might not be obvious on the surface. You might see a pause in their texting, a slightly longer silence, or a subtle hesitancy in the way they respond. That pause, that shift, is actually them processing something deeper. It's the internal tug-of-war between their instinct to retreat and their growing desire to engage. They might not say it aloud, they might not acknowledge it directly, but you'll feel it. It's the almost imperceptible change in tone, in energy, in the way they attempt to reconnect after testing you. This shift is crucial because it signals that the avoidant is engaged in self-reflection and emotional processing, something they rarely allow themselves to do. When you notice this, you understand that you're no longer dealing with the detached, unflappable version of them. You're seeing the part that feels, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's resisted. The third point is subtle confessions. Avoidants almost never lay their vulnerabilities bare, yet there are moments when the walls come down just enough for a whisper of truth to emerge. It might be a casual mention of missing something you shared, a fleeting memory that surfaces in conversation, or a gentle acknowledgement of a mistake or misunderstanding. These confessions are delicate. They're never loud, never dramatic, but they are meaningful. They are the avoidance way of saying without saying that they care, that they're aware of the emotional distance between you, and that they want in some small way to bridge it. Pay attention to these moments. Notice the hesitation, the way they almost pull the words back, the subtle vulnerability that pierces their usual armor. Each confession is a breadcrumb, a signal that you're reaching the part of them that craves connection but is terrified of exposure. When you catch these moments, you understand that the avoidant is not unfeeling. They're just conditioned to protect themselves. These confessions, however fleeting, mark progress. They mark openings in the wall that have been built over years of self-protection. And when you recognize them, you know you're in rare territory, a place where an avoidant allows themselves to be human, to be seen, to be touched emotionally. The fourth point is the "I was wrong" moment. Rare, precious, and often difficult for avoidance, this is when they take some form of responsibility, however small, for a misstep, a misunderstanding, or a conflict. It might not be a grand apology. It might not even be fully verbalized. Sometimes it's a message that hints at regret, an acknowledgement of your perspective, or a slight shift in tone that says, "I see you and I recognize my part." This moment is monumental because avoidants are trained to deflect blame, to minimize their own accountability, and to retreat from discomfort. When they admit a fault, even partially, it's a signal of trust and a softening of their emotional defenses. It's a subtle surrender, an indication that they care enough to face their discomfort rather than retreating entirely. This admission, though understated, is evidence that you've made an impact, that you've reached a level of connection where they can no longer deny the weight of their emotions. It's the avoidant version of giving ground, of showing that you matter enough to confront internal resistance. When this happens, you understand that you are no longer pushing against a wall that is unyielding. Instead, you're engaging with someone who is willing to meet you halfway, who is beginning to navigate the tension between self-protection and emotional intimacy. The fifth point is unexpected reach-outs. Avoidants often maintain distance, disappearing for stretches of time, keeping contact controlled and minimal. But when they reach out unexpectedly, without prompting, without an agenda, it's a powerful signal. It's a sign that you're on their mind more than they'd usually admit, that they're curious about your life, and that they're wrestling with their desire to connect versus their instinct to withdraw. These messages are usually brief, casual, or even cryptic, but they carry immense weight. They represent a step toward vulnerability, a small but significant leap across the divide they've been maintaining. Unexpected reach-outs are a form of testing, of exploration, and of admission that they value your presence more than they previously allowed themselves to acknowledge. When you receive these messages, pay attention not just to the words, but to the timing, the tone, and the subtle cues that reveal internal conflict. Every reach out is a breadcrumb leading to deeper connection, a moment where the avoidance guard softens, if only for a fleeting instant. Recognizing these attempts is crucial because they demonstrate a willingness to engage, a crack in the wall, and a rare opportunity to connect on a meaningful level. By now, if you've been attentive, you can see a pattern emerging. Avoidants communicate in subtle, almost hidden ways. They rarely give themselves fully, but when they speak, when they shift, when they confess, when they admit fault, when they reach out unexpectedly, they are signaling something profound. These moments are your roadmap. They're your signposts that you've done something significant, you've moved past the surface level defenses, and reached the emotional core. You've created an environment where an avoidant can explore feelings that are uncomfortable, unfamiliar, and often frightening. These first 5 points are not just tactics or signs, they are evidence of connection. They are proof that the avoidant is not just present physically, but emotionally, internally, and psychologically engaged in a process that is rare and valuable. And as you recognize these moments, you begin to understand the delicate dance of avoidance, the push and pull, the testing and retreating, the subtle openings and hesitant closings. It's complex, it's frustrating, but it's also full of opportunity. You've reached a place many never do, a place where avoidance is no longer the only script, and where curiosity, vulnerability, and subtle desire can emerge in their raw, unguarded form. The 6th point is testing boundaries. Avoidants by nature are experts at maintaining control over emotional proximity. They pull back, they test, they retreat when they feel pressure, and they advance when they feel curiosity. But when they start testing boundaries, it's not a sign of disinterest, it's a subtle, almost imperceptible signal of engagement. They may ask questions that seem innocuous, but underneath they are probing, trying to understand how much space you will allow them to occupy in your life without overwhelming you. They might push for time, attention, or engagement, then pull back to gauge your reaction. They are trying to see if you will stay grounded, if you will maintain your own boundaries, and if you will hold your space without chasing them. These boundary tests are critical because they reveal their internal conflict. On one side, they want closeness, connection, and perhaps even intimacy, but on the other, they fear loss of autonomy, vulnerability, and exposure. When you notice these moments, it is an opportunity to observe without reacting impulsively, to allow them to navigate the tension without being pulled into games. If you stay calm, steady, and unflappable, they are confronted with something they rarely encounter: your own security and consistency, and in that the avoidant begins to feel something they rarely allow themselves to feel: trust. The seventh point is the hesitant compliment. Avoidants are rarely expressive, and when they offer admiration, appreciation, or acknowledgement, it's usually delivered with a certain restraint, a careful weighing of words. It might come as a "you handled that really well," or "I didn't expect you to manage that, but you did," phrases that are deceptively casual. The hesitation is telling, the momentary pause before speaking, the subtle qualification, or the almost apologetic tone reveals that giving a compliment feels risky for them. They fear attachment, vulnerability, and the possibility of seeming weak or exposed. Yet the fact that they offer it at all is powerful. It signals recognition and respect, even if they are uncomfortable admitting it. These hesitant compliments are proof that they are noticing your qualities, your boundaries, and your value. They are paying attention in a way they rarely show. And when you respond without overinflating their compliment or chasing further validation, you reinforce the dynamic that keeps them engaged and intrigued. This delicate dance, acknowledging without pursuing, receiving without demanding, strengthens the subtle bond forming between you and the avoidant. The eighth point is mirroring your actions. Avoidants are psychologically attuned to subtle cues, especially those that signal stability, confidence, and grounded presence. When they begin to mirror your behavior, adopting similar routines, speech patterns, or even emotional responses, it's not a conscious mimicry, it's a deep subconscious form of engagement. Mirroring happens because they are observing closely and learning, consciously or unconsciously, how to navigate interactions with someone they feel drawn to but also wary of. It is their way of testing the waters, of creating alignment without overcommitting. When you notice them mirroring your actions, it's an acknowledgement that you've become influential in their internal world, that they respect and even admire the way you move, think, and exist. Mirroring is subtle, yet it is an unmistakable indicator of attachment. The more consistent it becomes, the more it signals that the avoidant is internalizing your energy, learning from your presence, and slowly lowering their defenses. It is one of the quietest yet most profound signs that you've made a real impact. The ninth point is increased transparency. Avoidants are famously private, guarding their thoughts, emotions, and routines closely. When you witness a shift toward transparency, when they start sharing details of their day, small thoughts, or inner reflections, it is monumental. It is not a grand confession or an emotionally charged declaration. It is the quiet, deliberate opening of their inner world. This transparency signals trust, because for an avoidant, revealing even a minor detail can feel like giving away a piece of their control and autonomy. When they share, it is an acknowledgement that they value your presence enough to let their guard down in small ways. These moments might be subtle, a fleeting text, a casual story, or a tentative question, but they carry immense weight. Each act of transparency is a bridge, connecting the closed-off avoidant self with the relational world you inhabit together. By noticing, honoring, and responding to these disclosures without judgment or overreaction, you reinforce a safe space where the avoidant can continue to explore feelings and connection at their own pace. Over time, these tiny openings accumulate into meaningful intimacy. The 10th point is jealousy signs, but not the kind you would expect. Avoidants rarely exhibit overt jealousy. It often scares them or triggers a retreat. Instead, their jealousy manifests subtly, almost invisibly, in shifts of tone, slight hesitations, or curiosity-laden questions about your interactions with others. They may ask about your day in ways that are seemingly casual but carry a quiet intensity, or they may comment on your engagements with others with a mix of curiosity and restrained emotion. These subtle indicators are profound because they reflect a territory that is usually off limits, the avoidant's emotional stake in you. Jealousy in this context is a silent acknowledgement that they care, that they notice, and that your presence and your attention matter to them more than they are comfortable admitting. Recognizing these moments allows you to see the internal struggle that avoidance masks, the push and pull between desire and fear, closeness and retreat, attachment and detachment. When you notice these signs, you understand that you've entered the space where the avoidant is emotionally present, engaged, and subtly affected by your actions, even if they do not verbalize it openly. All of these points, from boundary testing to hesitant compliments, mirroring, transparency, and subtle jealousy, paint a picture of an avoidant who is quietly but unmistakably engaged. Each moment is a thread, weaving a tapestry of subtle communication, hidden desire, and guarded vulnerability. You've reached a stage where their deflection, their distance, and their habitual avoidance no longer dominate the interaction. Instead, curiosity, recognition, and emotional attunement are emerging. These interactions are not loud or dramatic. They are quiet, nuanced, and psychologically complex, requiring careful observation, patience, and grounded presence from you. Yet for those who can read the signs, they represent undeniable evidence that you are having a tangible impact. Understanding avoidant behavior requires a combination of patience, emotional intelligence, and attentiveness. Each subtle shift, every hesitant phrase, every act of mirroring or transparency is a footprint of connection. Avoidants do not give themselves easily, but when they do, even in these small ways, it signals a profound acknowledgement of your presence, value, and influence in their internal world. You begin to notice patterns, tiny breakthroughs, and moments where the usual push-pull dynamic is replaced by cautious engagement. And in these moments, you realize something powerful. This isn't about manipulation, control, or winning. It's about witnessing the rare, authentic openings of someone who struggles with emotional intimacy and recognizing the progress they are making, sometimes painfully slowly, sometimes almost imperceptibly, but always meaningfully. These first 10 points, signature phrases, silent shifts, subtle confessions, admissions of fault, unexpected reach-outs, boundary tests, hesitant compliments, mirroring, transparency, and subtle jealousy form the foundation of understanding when you've truly reached an avoidant. They signal that your presence, consistency, and emotional steadiness have had an effect that few people ever manage. You're not only noticing their behavior, you're interpreting it, valuing it, and understanding it in a way that acknowledges both their struggle and their attempts at connection. Each sign is a victory in its own right, a moment of recognition that the avoidant is not as untouchable as they seem, and the beauty lies in the subtlety. There is no grand gesture, no dramatic declaration, no fireworks. There is only the quiet, powerful acknowledgement that something real is happening, that something genuine is stirring within someone who has spent much of their life avoiding these very feelings. The 11th point is future hints. Avoidants rarely discuss the future in concrete terms because commitment triggers discomfort and fear. Yet when they start to drop hints about maybe we could or what if, it signals something profound. These statements are not idle speculation. They are the avoidant tentatively imagining a world in which you are present, in which they are allowed a form of closeness without fully exposing themselves to vulnerability. When an avoidant offers even the smallest glimpse into hypothetical scenarios, it shows that you are occupying mental and emotional space in their life. They are cautiously testing the waters of possibility, exploring attachment in a way that feels safe, while still leaving them room to retreat if they feel threatened. Notice the subtlety, the phrasing, the hesitation, the almost casual tone that belies the internal tension. Future hints are like whispers from their inner world, signaling that your presence has sparked contemplation, curiosity, and a willingness to consider connection that they rarely allow themselves to entertain. These statements are not just words, they are evidence of imagination, hope, and the careful navigation of feelings that have long been suppressed. The 12th point is reluctant agreement. Avoidants are known for defending their independence and resisting pressure, so when they agree to something, they usually resist meeting plans, emotional sharing, or a small favor. It is significant. Reluctant agreement is not about obedience or compliance, it's a subtle surrender. A quiet acknowledgement that they are willing to stretch beyond comfort zones to maintain connection. They may preface their agreement with hesitation, rationalization, or an almost defensive tone, but the underlying truth is undeniable. They are participating willingly. Each act of reluctant agreement is a breakthrough because it shows that the avoidant values the relationship enough to engage despite internal resistance. Recognizing this requires patience and emotional awareness. You must resist the urge to overpraise or chase, and instead honor the small but meaningful step they've taken. Over time, these moments accumulate, forming a foundation of trust, engagement, and cautious intimacy that rarely exists in avoidant relationships without significant effort. The 13th point is the unexpected apology. Avoidants struggle with admitting fault because doing so requires vulnerability and accountability, two things they instinctively avoid. So when they apologize, even for something minor, it is monumental. The apology may come across as casual, hesitant, or even understated, but it signals an internal shift. They are acknowledging that their behavior affected someone they care about, and they are willing to face discomfort to repair it. This is not something they do lightly. It often requires them to confront fear, defensiveness, and habitual self-protection. The unexpected apology is proof that the avoidant is engaging in self-reflection, recognizing the relational impact of their actions, and valuing the connection enough to attempt repair. For those attuned to the nuances, this is a breakthrough moment. It is an opening of the heart, however small, that demonstrates care, awareness, and the capacity for relational growth. It is not a grand gesture, but it is deeply significant. The 14th point is invitations to engage. Avoidants rarely reach out for emotional engagement because it risks exposure. Yet when they do, it is a clear signal of internal attachment. Invitations may be subtle, a question about your day, a request for your input, or a casual suggestion to spend time together, but they reveal that the avoidant values your presence and perspective. These invitations are not demands, they are cautious tests of connection, an exploration of intimacy within boundaries they can tolerate. When an avoidant invites engagement, it shows that they are willing to risk discomfort, that they are considering relational connection as something desirable rather than threatening. Observing these moments requires sensitivity and patience. Responding with calm presence and steadiness reinforces the dynamic, encouraging further openness without triggering retreat. Over time, invitations to engage signal a growing comfort with emotional proximity and the emergence of trust, key milestones in navigating the complex emotional landscape of an avoidant. The 15th point is lingering after conversations. Avoidants are notorious for creating distance, for keeping emotional and physical interactions strictly controlled. Yet there are moments when they linger on a message, in a conversation, or in shared moments longer than expected. This lingering is not accidental. It is a subtle sign of attachment. They are choosing to stay connected, even if just slightly, rather than retreating immediately to safety. This behavior indicates that your presence holds significance, that the avoidant is experiencing a rare willingness to engage without fully withdrawing. Pay attention to timing, tone, and subtle cues. A slightly longer text, an extra question, or a hesitation before leaving the conversation all reveal a quiet but meaningful presence. Lingering is proof that they are thinking about connection, reflecting internally, and exploring emotions that often scare them. It's evidence that they are navigating the push-pull dynamic with curiosity and care rather than default avoidance. When you observe these 5 points together, future hints, reluctant agreements, unexpected apologies, invitations to engage, and lingering presence, you start to notice a pattern. The avoidant is engaging with you in ways that are rare, nuanced, and emotionally significant. These behaviors are not dramatic or overt. They are subtle, almost invisible to those untrained in the language of avoidance, yet each instance is a breakthrough, a sign that the avoidant is processing, testing, and slowly lowering their defenses. Recognizing these moments requires patience, emotional intelligence, and careful observation. You must resist the urge to overinterpret or push, because avoidants often retreat under pressure. Instead, notice, acknowledge, and respond with grounded presence. Your steadiness allows them to experiment with connection safely, to explore attachment without feeling trapped, and to gradually develop trust. Avoidants are complicated. Their behavior is layered, often contradictory, and driven by internal conflict between fear of closeness and desire for connection. The beauty of these subtle signs is that they reveal progress in ways words alone cannot. A future hint is a mental experiment. A hesitant agreement is a leap over internal resistance. An unexpected apology is a confrontation of fear. An invitation to engage is an act of trust. And lingering presence is a conscious choice to connect, despite the instinct to retreat. When you recognize these patterns, you understand that avoidance is not absence. It is a complex form of engagement, a protective strategy that masks a deep capacity for attachment when nurtured carefully. In these moments, you also start to notice the emotional texture of avoidance, the tension between desire and fear, the subtle gestures of care, the tiny openings of trust. All reveal that the avoidant is not incapable of connection. They are simply cautious, trained to protect themselves, and often unaware of how much they are actually revealing. Your presence, consistency, and emotional grounding create a rare environment where they can experiment with vulnerability, explore connection, and engage emotionally without fear of overwhelming exposure. Each point we've discussed is a thread in this tapestry, a delicate signal of relational engagement, and a marker of progress that few get to witness. Understanding the avoidant is a journey of noticing small wins, subtle breakthroughs, and nuanced signals. Each of these 5 points represents that progress in action. They are evidence that the avoidant is moving from distance to curiosity, from detachment to subtle engagement, and from guardedness to careful vulnerability. Observing them requires patience, attentiveness, and emotional steadiness, but when you see these signs, you are witnessing the quiet emergence of connection, rare, fragile, and deeply meaningful. The avoidant is not declaring their feelings loudly or directly, but through these behaviors, they are showing something far more profound: an acknowledgement of attachment, a willingness to engage, and a careful navigation of vulnerability that only those attuned to their subtle language can truly understand. The 16th point is random acts of care. Avoidants rarely show affection directly, but small gestures, checking in, remembering something you said, or offering help reveal attention and investment. These subtle actions are their way of stepping out of their comfort zone and signaling connection without words. Noticing and acknowledging these moments allows them to experiment with closeness safely, building trust gradually. The 17th point is acknowledging your growth. When an avoidant comments on your strength, independence, or how you handle life, it is a quiet form of admiration. They notice your inner qualities, even if they don't express it fully. This recognition shows respect and emotional attunement, reflecting a desire to connect while maintaining their sense of security. The 18th point is the I can't stop thinking about you moment. Rare for avoidance, this admission of mental and emotional presence signals internal engagement and desire. It is a vulnerable step toward intimacy, showing that they are wrestling with their need for autonomy while being drawn to you. The 19th point is admitting they miss you. Avoidants avoid expressing longing, so when they do, it's a breakthrough. Whether subtle or direct, it reveals attachment, care, and emotional involvement, despite their instinct to retreat. It's one of the clearest signs that they are allowing themselves to feel deeply. The 20th point is the shift from defense to curiosity. Avoidants are usually protective and distant, but when they become genuinely curious about you, your thoughts, feelings, and experiences, it shows transformation. They are moving from fear to engagement, exploring connection tentatively, and opening themselves to relational growth. Together, these 5 points show the avoidant breaking through walls of distance. They reveal attention, care, reflection, and a willingness to connect in subtle but meaningful ways. Avoidance is not indifference, it's a protective strategy. By noticing and responding to these signs with patience and steadiness, you create a safe space where vulnerability and intimacy can grow. Each moment is a small victory marking real emotional engagement and a rare, profound connection.